All right, welcome back for part two of our conversation with Nick Lensander from Lenk Media. Nick joined us last week in our discussion around AI in sports. And this week we wanted to continue that conversation. I thought it went so well. And we never got to the video and the entrepreneurial side. So we're going to have a part two with Nick today and continue that discussion. Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, awesome to be here. I know there's a lot more to cover. And for those that listened to last week, if you haven't, we'll put the link down below. But it was a good one and looking forward to another good talk.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So today, Nick, the first question, I just want to throw it to you on this one. I know that you own a production studio. You do video and podcasting. And when it comes to AI and any emerging tech, just to start the conversation, I think it's going to roll from here. How has any of these emerging techs or AI impacted you and how you do your job?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting AI tech that's been kind of rolling out here the last year, even 2 years, when Adobe started releasing things in their products, in their creative suite of products, whether it be, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, video editing tools, all that kind of stuff. The way that I've seen a lot of real valuable use in kind of this area, this digital media, social media area, is helping with content creation, and a lot of otherwise mundane, like tasks that have to be repeated, helping to create cuts of long form content, since that is literally pretty much everything nowadays with this podcast being an example of it, and being able to cut it down into various shorts for a bunch of different platforms, and just making all those different tasks a lot easier than having to go and cut down manually every time. And you can just use it as a tool to then just refine what it does. And it's been really great. Honestly, we use it for all our short cut ups, and it's not perfect, but it does a surprisingly good job for where it's at right now. And there's certain tools that I can reference as well if we get more into it. But yeah, I think it's exciting where it's going in this creative space, and there's a lot more to talk about with what Open AI is doing with tools like Sora. They had Dolly 2 is kind of what brought the image creation to lights, and then kind of going crazy from there. But Sora is a whole different topic with literally video creation from text, and just a prompt, and it's really impressive.
I just want to interrupt because I feel like not everybody is as familiar with the tools as you guys are. So like, if you can explain to me, and John's explained to me before, but if you can explain to sort of me or an average listener exactly what Sora does, like how it works.
So it's interesting. We'll try to put some example clips up if you're watching on video, but Sora, basically it's like a chat GPT kind of engine, essentially run by GPT, but it literally creates videos that seem extremely real. Whether it's, you type in a person walking down a street, you could do it in a comic format, you could do it in a Spielberg type film, in a forest, in this type of car, with this person. You can type in any detail you want, and it creates a video in very little time out of nothing.
I would really encourage our listeners, if we can put like a link in the show notes, I would encourage our listeners to go, like, it's one of those things where it kind of has to be seen to be believed. Like when John described it to me, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And then we went and I forget what you typed in even, but you were like a woman walking down a street in Beijing or something. It was like some random city, and it was just incredible
Yeah.
to see video that looked real just from a text prompt.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, and John, I know you can touch on this in a little bit, but there's a lot of things that come along with a tool that powerful. So, I mean, Sora is not open to the public, and for good reason. It's just open to certain people they're testing it with. But it's an incredibly powerful tool. And I mean, it's clearly showing where things are going. I mean, they release videos from it all the time, like that. And yes, there are clear flaws in it if you're, have a good eye. But to the naked eye, it is really crazy good. And I mean, eventually, is it going to be indistinguishable aside from, certain aspects maybe that they have to implement to, make it known that it was just created out of nothing, versus being reality. So, and obviously there's a lot that comes with that, and fake videos, and, we all know a lot about that, with AI kind of rolling out now. But yeah, some really powerful tools, with Sora as a leading example, that will change, everything in the future.
Nick, from your perspective as an entrepreneur, owner of a studio, where you're pumping out work, you see right now AI as, from what I'm hearing, a tool. It's another tool in your tool belt that allows you to grow your business, without having to increase your labor perspective. Like, instead of having 3 people and 2 part-time
Exactly.
people, you're able to use these tools with maybe just yourself and one other person, something like that.
Yep.
So it's a huge time saver.
Exactly.
So it's an asset, not a threat.
Yeah, and I mean, this kind of goes back to the the conversation of just in general, how do you look at it, right? Are you gonna adapt and use it as a tool, or are you gonna be try to be threatened by it? I mean, humans are always gonna be a part of the picture. We're not going away, right? So, the tasks and the things that we need to be good at just get refined and more refined and more refined. So the creative aspects of it, the nuances that humans see, the feelings that we feel that we're able to portray in messaging and understand context and various situations and creative aspects, those things are just even more important. So using it as a tool to kind of guide and help do things that take longer is the greatest part of it. Will it get to something bigger where it's going to start, changing everything? Yes, but, not quite yet.
And I
if
guess
you go ahead, Amber. No, go
what's
ahead.
interesting to me is sort of the philosophical question of like, does it matter? Like, I see that the line is being blurred, and this has been happening for a while, even in sports, between video games and actual football games. Like, it can be very difficult to tell the difference if between a real game and something that is
I mean, like
is a,
how good the Madden games are getting over the
how good
years.
the Madden games are getting, and also how they're shooting the real games. Like the way
I have noticed that the way the games are
there's a
shot, the real games look more
yes.
and more like how they make the video game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just true in sports. There's been a lot of crossover in the entertainment industry, making movies or television shows out of that come out of what were started as video games. So I recently started watching Halo, and it started as a game. Now it's a television series, I guess. And like, I've only seen one episode, and I watched it on an airplane. So take what you will about the quality of the display, but I couldn't tell if it was generated or shot. I kept going back and forth. And I work in this industry and I couldn't tell.
And you had an original, what was your original, you were going somewhere with this. Does it matter?
Does it matter? If I like the show, if the show is entertaining and moving and interesting and, engages me, does it matter?
Nick, John, you're in the industry too. What do you, where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I mean,
and you're out in LA where, this is the big industry.
Right. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you're being entertained by it, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, we've been entertained by cartoons, hand drawings, all kinds of stuff. Now it's just, amped up to the level of looking like literal reality in some cases. But, once it gets to blurring lines of movie makers, various people's, identities and visual things being used, it's already changing. You see it with, actors and people wanting, the use of their likeness in certain things, et cetera, et cetera. So once, it gets indistinguishable, then it's going to be a little weird. There's going to be there'll be some change in how things are done for sure. Because I mean, you're paying these actors millions of dollars, right? What if you could just do it with all your tech
or the direct, like, I'm sure you've seen those things that are like recreate Harry Potter as a Wes Anderson movie,
right?
And it does.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I imagine if I were Wes Anderson, or if I wanted to be the next Wes Anderson, I would be perhaps unpsyched.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that will happen once it gets to the point of that. Even though it seems we're very close to that, we're actually not that close to that. Again, Sora is the first tool of seeing the real use of how something like that can happen, and it's closed, it's not public, and it's very flawed. If you look for nuances, the nuances
they have
are
trouble
flawed.
With the fingers.
Well, there's a lot of troubles, yeah, but fingers are one of them for sure.
I wish I could put this in the show notes. I'm going to try to send you the link, Nick, because I literally laughed until I cried. Someone had asked AI to do ASL, American Sign Language, because it has such trouble with fingers, and literally not one hand in one image is right. Like it.
Exactly.
I don't know why the fingers are such a stumbling point, but I had tears in my eyes. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah. So the image creation with Dolly stuff definitely has had trouble with fingers, and it's getting better. But just think about the trouble once that's moving, right? It's frame by frame. How is it building? The scene, the shot, the idea, everything into one. So it's gonna have trouble with the new nuances for quite a while, I think. So I mean, there's it will get to a point eventually, but we'll see. It'll be down the road, I think.
And Nick, from a skill set perspective, if we have any young professionals or students graduating soon, or people in the industry, and Amber, you can chime in on this too. I imagine people like yourselves who are hiring, as you grow your business, you're going to be looking for talent that knows how to use these various tools, just like they always have over the last 50 years. Emerging tech, those who know how to use it well, use it ethically, etc., they're the ones who are going to get the jobs.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thinking, outside the box. It's how do I utilize these tools to help us with whatever we're doing, right? So like you said, there's been tools, they just look different now, right? And they do different things, they do more advanced things. So it's the creative thinking, and being able to understand things at a high level, and then implement new tech to help you get there, is one of the big things there. It's kind of like your school example, um, about using AI in the classroom that you guys talked about in a previous episode. It's you know are like you're just gonna have a replace schoolwork, right? No, I mean you can't just stop people from using it either. So it's tell us your thinking behind why you're using it, how you're using it to help with the goal, right? Because it is just another tool. But yeah, no, it's interesting again how that's going to evolve. But yeah, your skill set, I mean, start using it wherever you can, new tools that you find, and just practicing, because I mean, the more you see, the more you use it, the more ideas you're going to have about it, the more use cases you're going to have, to use it for, whatever you may be doing.
In the field you're in and where you work, are you seeing that skill set show up on resumes or potential hires or someone you're looking for?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting now that, AI has become a buzzword. Um, so it's, AI this, AI that, every new startup is about AI, whatever it may be. So it's, I think we're kind of at the end of the kind of boom, the AI boom, whatever we want to call it, kind of like the dot-com boom before we see the correction of actual AI and AI tools that are meaningful and that actually need to be there. Not just doing it because it's the new latest thing in tech for no reason whatsoever.
I think that's a great point. As we go through this podcast week over week, one of the things that dawned on me in the last couple of weeks was at first it was AI and just what you were referring to, Nick, the AI boom, the newness of it, the concern about it. But I see us very quickly transitioning to it's not AI. We got to give it a tool name. Do you use Sora? Do you use Sora well? Do you use Respeecher for your voice cloning? We're going to start naming tool names and categories that these tools work in and stop with the general, AI. AI is so many things. And I think for our audience, I think it's really important to move forward and start naming tools and what they do and what they don't do, and et cetera.
Yeah. So,
Well, sort of the way you used to be able to say I'm a graphic designer, and now on your resume, that that's not helpful. You say
Illustrator,
I'm
whatever.
proficient in Illustrator and Photoshop
Right,
and
right.
whatever it is.
Exactly.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, yeah, let me just add one last thing to that. So, I mean, there's some very clear use cases that are great for those kind of things. So the one that we've seen, and it's been around for a while, and it's grown a lot. Synthesio, which is a company that they mainly do kind of explainer videos for corporate language changes, making videos in a bunch of different languages, dubbing videos, a lot of that kind of tech and stuff is great. I mean, just think you have to if you're thinking you're making 100 videos for corporate, learning book or whatever, and you have to make it in a bunch of different languages, just think about the ease of not having to physically do that in a studio and repeat it and all the money that can spend. I mean, stuff like that, I think is a great, great way to, use it. Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good time in the show, this episode, to start going through some of the tools. So we've got Synthesio, you've mentioned Sora, which is closed right now to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Between all of us, Nick, Amber, what other tools either A, are you using, considering using, or have talked to your fellow peers about and what category of tool do they fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I've one off the top of my head that we use all the time. It's called Opus AI. It's opus.pro. It again is an AI that has to do with creating shorts and content based upon long form content. So it's captioning, and there's a lot of different like pieces to it that you can kind of build out what it is. But it's a great tool. So that's one that we use
Give me
definitely.
an example of how someone might use Opus, like one use
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. So you can take any long form piece of content. It's best used for uh, talking content, I guess, podcasts, interviews, whatever it may be. But it can do various things like make sure the subject's in the center of the frame for vertical videos, add captions in certain branding, uh, or delineate the best potential most viral moments of the video based upon the script that it builds out from you just submitting the video, and it can cut and clip a lot of things for you without having to manually time code everything. Go throughout. If you're doing a whole hour or 2 hours or whatever it may be, and so it can really pull out a lot of important moments and do a lot of different things that you had to do manually before, for you. And then you can kind of pick and choose and adjust as, you see fit, because, it's not perfect. But it's a great tool for sure.
Amber, have you heard of any, or do you use any?
I use ChatGPT mostly.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
So
It's a
far.
great one.
You can get a lot done with. Do you use the paid version or the free version?
I have used both, actually. There isn't I didn't see a huge difference.
I haven't either. The other tool I use Bing sometimes now, Gemini.
Right.
These are the different, Google, Microsoft, they're all coming out with their own version. And I have noticed a slight difference between all of them. The main difference is where the history of the data they collect. What does it go up to? Is it more recent? Does it end a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago? So that's some differentiations I've seen.
Yeah. And like you said, there's different variations of that for the kind of the big main companies. One that kind of got introduced recently is Meta AI, which is now incorporated in Instagram's search panel. So, you can give it more context when you're searching for things rather than username and name only, basically, and hashtags. So it can, understand and delineate what kind of content you're searching for. So, I mean, that's a good use case of it as well, I think, because Instagram and those social platforms are, some of the most widely searched places. So
yeah, and historically they were very poor at search.
Right. Exactly.
Within the platform.
It was very black and white.
Is that part of the Meta search engine that comes across all their? I know that I got notified recently on my Facebook page that Meta now has a search capability, AI search capability within Facebook. Is this all part of that same technology?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a combination of a lot of the different AI incorporations, but obviously they're incorporating it into their platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram. Honestly, I haven't checked, but I'm sure it's in WhatsApp. All their various suite of the Meta apps. But yeah, I mean, you can have it help you with things similar to a GPT, and a lot of these things are built on some of the GPT framework that OpenAI developed originally, and some of these companies are trying to build similar frameworks that OpenAI did. So it's there's a lot of overlap in some of these tools, but it's the context of how they're used, where they're pulling from, what do they know about you, various things. I mean, Facebook and Meta probably knows a decent amount about you, what you like, your various friends, a
A
lot of different,
decent amount.
putting it mildly, So, yeah. So, I mean, and they have just a standalone AI site. It's just called meta.ai. You can go there and use the tool. I mean,
Right.
their prompts are ask Meta AI anything, create a packing list for a trip, make my email sound more professional, play 90s trivia music, paint NYC in watercolor, simulate an interview, help me with an assignment. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. But yeah, tools like that are coming up more and more. I feel like we use AI in a lot of different ways in big software tools that we use anyways. I mean, banking apps, you start using it.
Right.
There's various AI. I mean, especially if you're creative, like all the Adobe suite has started incorporating AI to varying levels. They have Firefly and a lot of different stuff. I mean, they're incorporating a lot of AI kind of video work into their Premiere program with new updates that look really cool. So again, there's a lot around there for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think many consumers or all consumers understood that AI didn't pop up on the scene last January.
Right, exactly.
We've been seeing it used in areas just like you're saying. Along those same lines, Amber and I had the good fortune. We were down at the now infamous Columbia University 3 weeks ago, where I sat in on their AI ethics class, which is right across the street from the quad. And it was a very peaceful, quiet night. What we're seeing now on TV was not going on in that particular week or day. And this is what I want to ask you, some of the things I learned from that conversation. One of the gentlemen there, I believe, was the head of AI for JP Morgan. And he said something that I think is really relevant. When asked about ethical use of AI tools and legislation. And I think I already know the answer, what both of you will say, but I just want to share this with our audience. We all know that legislation and regulation comes very slow in a bureaucratic, process that no matter what country you live in, typically the bureaucratic process is slow. And when asked, gee, how can we keep up with AI regulation-wise when it's moving so quickly? I think it was him who said something, Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, where he said, typically the history of technology, emerging tech rollout is the marketplace usually decides the direction way before legislation does. Back in the day when you were probably young, Nick, we had browser wars between I think it was called Netscape.
Of course, yeah.
And there were suits and lawsuits and legislation fights, et cetera. But by the time it got settled, the marketplace had already decided which direction it wanted to go in and what the rules were going to be. And he felt, and some members of the classroom felt, that would be very similar to what's going to happen with AI and the emerging tech we're dealing with now, that we are all, the three of us and everyone else out there, we are deciding by our company agreements, maybe our union agreements with like the studios in Hollywood, the banks, we're kind of forming our own ethical rules through the marketplace in a way.
But the thing is,
so that's what he shared. Go ahead, Amber.
This is what, the people that I've spoken to in the finance sector, their point is kind of, right now it's wide open and there aren't really any regulations and there aren't really any laws or rules. So what I'm feeling, what I get from them is this, like, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Are we what?
Allowed to swear on this podcast?
Well, we've done so.
Oh, okay.
The market makes the rules, so yeah.
There you go.
I think the market likes it when you swear.
What I'm getting from the people who work in finance is a very strong wish that the regulators would get their shit together, because they don't want to establish practices that then the SEC comes around in 2 years and they're fined out of existence because they were doing something that wasn't illegal. Like,
Right.
they're desperate for
Some rules,
some rules,
guidelines.
some guidelines, some guardrails,
What?
some guidance as to what.
And I can see the finance and the banking and the insurance. I get
And
all that.
healthcare.
And healthcare for 100%. I think I think we all can agree on that, because imagine if you're in one of those industries, and we're going to have guests on from those industries, that they're definitely going to say that. I used to work in those industries. I totally get it. They just want to make sure they're not breaking any rules and they don't get fined. I think for the entrepreneurs out there like Nick, who are not in one of those industries, I think Nick and his peers will be setting which tools are best,
Yes,
which
they
tools
will
are
decide whether
ethical.
it's
Right.
Betamax or VHS. They
Yeah,
will
yeah.
decide
That's a good
whether it's
example.
Blu-ray or HD DVD or whatever
Right.
the hell the other one was. You know, yes, on that level, I think that's true.
So the reason I bring it up, Nick, is when you select tools or you talk to your friends and peers, um, you're looking at these tools just like we've always looked at tools. You're not really concerned that you're breaking any ethical boundaries yet. Am I right? Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair. Is there some more boundaries to think about when, the tools get so advanced? Sure. Um, is there things that, you didn't have to cross when you were deciding between the tools that you were using before? Absolutely. But like you said, the market does decide, what how tools develop in the tech space, because like you said, the lawmakers and regulators, they're so behind. And the problem I see with some of these companies is that they don't want to be the one that's made an example of, right? And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
because the government can make an example of whoever they want to at any point. So if
right.
they want to come after you, then they can. So they'll figure out a way to do it. I mean, so the TikTok, I guess, thing now that's going on, they're somewhat being made an example of. Is
Right.
it their fault entirely? No. I mean, there weren't laws and rules in place for them to, not run into this roadblock. But that's an example of one of the major companies, trying to be made an example of, trying doing things the right way, I guess. And so that's why a lot of these companies try to put up guardrails themselves so that they don't have to deal with whatever it may be down the road. And those guardrails that they develop themselves honestly develop into the market kind of guidelines as things progress on. I mean, another example is looking back at kind of what Apple did with device and customer privacy. And, they kind of built that into their ecosystem, and they fought against the federal government for the people. And it just has become a norm and a standard that they just decided to set, and people liked it. So it's, what kind of standard is the company setting, and is it something that people like and or agree with? Is it the market agreeing with it? And then if they do, then it oftentimes becomes the standard.
Yeah, I totally get that, and especially if you're in one of the healthcare finance industries or insurance industries that are highly regulated and
Right.
watched, and
Right.
they're very cautious. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And in this particular space, most of these companies, or many of them, are global. They have to look at the laws of Europe, the laws of Asia, the laws of North America, et cetera. That's a lot. That's a lot. Amber, in your space and your world in healthcare, do you see some of the AI adoption going slowly because of the concern that you don't want to break any rules?
Yes, and I think there is high interest. It is on everybody, it's on the tip of everybody's tongue, AI
Yeah.
right now in healthcare. And but I think that, sort of like in a worst case scenario example, what happens when a health insurance company is using AI to decide whether or not someone gets a certain treatment? What happens when it's a life or death situation?
Yeah, and AI decided one thing, it didn't go,
And
let's say it didn't go well.
and maybe a human being would have decided something else. I think that's sort of the end result that that people have hanging over their heads, or that are trying to steer clear of. But at the same time, making sure that the industry avails itself of the good things that AI has to offer.
I think this conversation really points out, and I hope our listeners are getting that, is that AI is such a broad phrase, like we talked about earlier. AI tools used in healthcare, for example, those concerns are very different than AI tools in entertainment, media, potentially. I mean, they're not determining life or death, well or unwell, et cetera. Well, different ethical concerns, different concerns in general. Uh, and I think it's important to differentiate that instead of just saying we need to regulate quote unquote AI. That's
Right.
way, way, way too broad. Way
Well,
too
I
broad.
think moving forward, I think, part of the goal of the podcast is to have people on from those different industries to sort of talk about
Mm.
what the specifics are, and what the nuances are in finance, in at a movie studio, at a healthcare company, at all of those things.
Yeah, I think like Nick is an entrepreneur. He's got a couple businesses going, and we can see through Nick is sharing right now, he's able to get these businesses off the ground and grow them without having 10 people. He might be able to do it with two or three. That's huge. That's huge for an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's tough. Especially when you're an entrepreneur, though, you should have the mindset. You have to pivot and look at tools that you can use to help your business and yourself. So yeah, I mean, business owners that potentially are set in their ways and don't look at opportunities like in implementing various AI tools into their workflows or whatever are it's gonna not be great for them. And there's gonna be a ton more opportunity to build meaningful things with a lot less that's necessary behind it, other than whatever you are aiming to do, and your work that you put in, and all that stuff stays the same. But it's you can be way more efficient with your time. You can potentially do more, create things quicker. But the basic principles still apply, and at times things do take as long as they always did, because at the end of the day, there's a person on the other side of whatever technology you're using. And
And that's not going to change.
that's always been there, and that's not going to change.
100%.
So
100%.
All right. As our official timekeeper, I'm going to have.
I know you have to. Can I ask one last question?
I think
Oh,
we may have lost her, so let's just keep it just keep it rolling
yeah.
then.
One last question for you, Nick. On the tools that you use, I know that one of the tools that I want to have a guest on in the future is a company called Respeecher out of
Mhm.
Ukraine. They do a lot of the voice cloning technology for Hollywood and other industries.
Mhm.
They have a watermark on their deliverables so that you can tell it was using their product, their AI product. they do so to prevent misuse of voice cloning, which could impact democracies or world peace. In the tools that you use, this is the last question, Burr, and welcome back. In the tools that you use, do you think even at that level there should be a watermark or a digital transparent that this image was created using AI and what the tool was? Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be to some degree, because how are you going to tell what was filmed, what was recorded, and what was created? So what that looks like, we don't know yet. A watermark is kind of a traditional thing, that has always been around for visual aspects, and there's audio watermarks and such as well. But maybe we can get creative with this at some point. How can we maybe utilize the blockchain to do something with watermarks, digital watermarks, or I don't know. I mean, we've got to figure out how the best way to do this is, because I mean, you won't be able to tell the watermark. I mean, maybe in the beginning of an audio clip, or where is it going to be? Like how is it implemented when, especially in the social media landscape now? Like you see clips and a lot of different things, and then things go viral based upon a few seconds here and there. So it's what's the best way to implement it is the real question, and how. But I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's they're working on ways to include that in it, but we haven't really seen a way that's becoming a standard to do that. But I'm sure there will be something that emerges at some point, for sure. I mean, there has to be.
Yeah, just like in any emerging tech development, there'll be a moment where some company will come up with a great idea, the market will like it, people will like it, and it'll start to be adopted as a standard.
Yeah,
absolutely. It just got me thinking, because I know Reese Speech, or the voice cloning part, they've come up with something that the marketplace loves. I just started talking out loud, thinking other products and other tool categories that probably will be developing in the coming days, months, years.
100%. Makes too much sense.
Cool. Nick, thank you so much. I mean, we've had 2 great episodes. I hope everybody got something out of this. I think the more that we can educate everybody on what this topic called AI is about, the better. So I really appreciate you spending time with us for 2 weeks in a row. And as always, if you have questions or comments, please email us. And also, we're going to have a lot of show notes over the last 2 episodes. We'll make sure there's some show notes out there with some of the product names and links that Nick had mentioned during the show. All right, Digital Dilemma fans, that wraps up another episode. Thanks for tuning in and navigating our tech world with us.
Please rate us and leave a review. And if you enjoyed it, tune in next time. We'd also love it if you would send us any questions or suggest guests via email. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast.